Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Seetal. You're watching Seetal MD. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this ironing mat because I needed an ironing mat. If you haven't already, I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification button. Let's get started. I tried to use whatever scraps of fabric I had lying around the house. This was a piece of fabric which is used for block-out curtains, and I used it as a picture backdrop for one of my YouTubing things when I take product photography and things like that. So I thought I would use it for this to do the backing of it. And then I also had this really nice checkered fabric, which or plaid fabric, which I actually never used for one of the projects that I wanted to do. So I thought, what better way than to use this fabric for my ironing mat. And as for the inside or the padding for the ironing mat, I used this toweling material that I bought a long time ago to sew baby nappies, which this was just a leftover from years and years ago. And I started with cutting my fabric, and I wanted my fabric to be as big as my mat, my cutting mat. As you can see, you know, the gray cutting mat underneath this whole ripping of fabric. So whatever measurement it is that you're using for your ironing mat, you need to cut a little bit extra, because as you sew, because we're sewing like many layers of fabric, right? So as you sew, your fabric will run, and you need to have extra because you will go ahead and cut the excess fabric off after sewing. So in the end, you'd end up with a much smaller mat, if that makes any sense. So all in all, I had the 1 layer of block out and then 4 layers of towelings. You could use normal towels, old towels, and then my pretty fabric to go on top. I used 3 methods to pin the fabrics together before I went to the sewing machine. One was, of course, traditionally pinning them together. The other one was using clips on the ends. And lastly, I took a sewing needle and did a rough sewing in and out, just to keep all the 5 or 6 pieces of fabric together. Before sewing, I released my tension a bit, so I turned the tension of my sewing machine to a 3, which I didn't really show here. And then I used a normal sewing machine setting, but I did the stitch length to a 3.0 just so it's a bit bigger. And then I also used a walking foot. Now a walking foot makes sewing layers of fabric a lot easier, but it also makes sewing just about any fabric easy. So I use a walking foot for all my sewing. If you do not have a walking foot, it doesn't mean that you can't do quilting or a mat, something like this. You can, it will just make it a bit more tougher. I ran several stitches widthwise of the ironing mat in equal distance from each other, but I didn't do a lengthwise stitch, so I just did the stitching from one end to the other. Once done with the stitching, I laid out my ironing mat and cut off all the uneven edges, because your ironing mat will run as you're sewing, just like a normal quilt. So just square off the ends. I used a homemade bias tape, so I sewed one side down, folded it onto the other side, and then with hiding the raw edges did another stitch from the other end. When I came to the corner, I just turned the bias tape along the other side, which will give the corner a mitered edge, and then just sewed on the mitered triangle. When I came to the edge, I cut off the excess bias tape that I didn't need, and then the first part where I started stitching the bias tape, I turned it on itself and then sewed the end of it on it. That way I can hide the raw edge of the bias tape. Turning the bias tape onto the other side of the mat and ironing it is not as easy as it may seem, but don't give up, it can be done. What you need to do is cut off any excess seam allowance, that way, or excess seam, that way you have enough space to turn the bias tape around. Lots of patience and sewing later, I came up with a really nice ironing mat, and it feels really luxurious in the sense that, of course, it's not something really expensive, but it feels luxurious because you've got this really big and nice space to iron your clothes, and it's easily foldable to be kept aside. I can just roll it out and get it out of the way. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you've stayed till the end of this video, I really appreciate every single one of you for watching my videos and subscribing to my videos. And if you haven't already, hit the bell notification button because you will be notified when I upload next. And I will see you again next week. Bye guys.